Hi everyone, welcome to Hue at Home. I'm Tracy Koga. Have you ever fantasized yourself in a movie? Maybe Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, or Jodie Foster in any one of her movies. Well, our first guest on Hue at Home may be living one in real life. I'll sit down with Dr. Joss Reimer. She's medical lead for Manitoba's Vaccine Implementation Task Force. Dr. Reimer is in the spotlight as all eyes are on her to show us the light at the end of the tunnel. The only problem is this movie doesn't have an ending quite yet. Hello, Dr. Joss Reimer. Thank you so much for taking time and welcome to Hue at Home.
Thank you so much for having me.
In this day of virtual. And just before my intro to you, it was almost like living a real life movie, I think, for you a little bit. These last, months that we've been living, nobody could have predicted this. And I guess my first question to you, Dr. Reimer, is I guess your own personal journey on how you've become to be the medical lead for Manitoba's Vaccine Implementation Task Force. That's a mouthful of a title, too.
I know, isn't it? I, like you, really didn't predict this and certainly didn't know that I was going to end up. Sorry, having a computer issue there. Apologize.
That's all right.
Certainly didn't predict that I would be in the role that I am. So this was all quite unexpected. I mean, thankfully, public health docs, as part of our training, we do emergency preparedness, and part of that is pandemic preparedness. So, we never hope that we have to use those skills, but I think all of us do feel that we've been trained well to respond in this situation. But my journey, I guess I don't know where you want me to start, how far back we're talking here, but I started off in obstetrics and gynecology and switched into public health because I really wanted to be able to prevent a lot of the things that I kept seeing over and over again in the clinic, in the hospital, and wanted to be able to make the world a better place. And public health seemed like a great way to do that. So throughout my training, I was really inspired by all of the medical officers of health that I worked with. Vaccines are part of our bread and butter in public health, so spent a lot of time learning about vaccines and vaccine rollout. And since I've been working as a medical officer, I've become the medical director of public health for Winnipeg. And I think it's probably around that leadership role that brought me into the forefront of the selection for leading this incredibly important and massive vaccine rollout campaign that we're doing.
Oh, and I mean, and it changes constantly, probably. Am I correct, Dr. Reimer, too? And the types of vaccines, and all the information out there. Let's talk a little bit now about the vaccines. All of the ones that are out there, and I guess maybe dispel any of the myths, and obviously, you've seen that and heard that, whether in the news or in social media, and how much has social media been a hindrance or a help in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, social media can be both helpful and harmful, depending on where people are getting their information from. And so we do try to use social media to reach people, because there's many people who are not watching the press conferences and who don't maybe read the newspaper regularly. So we do need to use multiple mechanisms. But I agree, there's a lot of myths out there. Some of the things that we hear often are fears that the vaccines can change your DNA, which they absolutely cannot do. I wonder, it might be helpful if I explain how they do work so that people can see that they can't do that. So normally, when you have an infection with a virus, the virus enters your body and the proteins on the outside of the virus get recognized as foreign by your immune system. And so your body starts to create this army of antibodies that can recognize that protein. So if it ever comes again, they're ready and can fight it off right away. And most vaccines work the same way by either introducing a weak or a dead form of the virus, or even they chop it up and just give you a piece of the virus, which is the protein. And then the immune system still sees that as foreign and builds up that army. But these vaccines work a little differently, and they're really smart new technology, where what they do is they send in what's called messenger RNA, which is like almost a recipe card or instructions. And those get sent into your body, they go into your cells, and your cell reads it and starts to produce those proteins itself, so that the proteins that are made in your cell then get recognized as foreign by your immune system. So we're not actually injecting any part of the real virus at all. It's just that little instruction sheet that teaches your cell how to make those proteins temporarily so that we can trigger that whole immune response. So it's really interesting. But because it has the term RNA in it, people get worried that it's going to impact their DNA. And it doesn't go anywhere near your DNA at all. It's just that little recipe card that your cell can read and then create a factory to make more proteins. And that recipe card gets broken down quite quickly. So this is a temporary thing, just long enough that your immune system can create that army so that if the virus ever does show up, the proteins on the virus are the same as the ones that your cell made. And so your immune system goes like, I've seen those before, and is ready to fight it.
Interesting. So then why do you need 2 shots?
So the second shot's really helpful because it boosts the immune system. It's like a reminder and helps your body go, yeah, no, I do recognize this, and it can build an even stronger army the second time it gets exposed to the virus. And we also know that these boosters, these second shots, tend to help the immune system to last longer as far as its ability to fight. So, as time goes by, maybe the immune system doesn't remember quite as much, that army gets smaller. And then when we boost with a second dose, it's like a reminder that, no, this is a real thing that you need to be ready for. And it gives that additional stress on your immune system to remain immune to that virus for a longer period of time.
Wow. This is so good to know and so much more reassuring. And actually, I just want to add that right after this interview, I am going for my vaccination, my first shot.
Congratulations.
So, yes, I'm getting the Pfizer one. Okay, so let's go now to this whole conversation and conflict of people not wanting the vaccine. When you have just explained this all, and it makes it very clear that we should all be vaccinated.
Yeah, and obviously, I've had the chance to be trained for many years on how to read the scientific literature. And so, I feel so confident in the benefits of this vaccine to save lives, to prevent you from ending up in the hospital, and to get us back to whatever our new normal will be. But people don't have that same opportunity. I mean, they're not going to go to school for 13 years to try to get to that. And people really are making what they believe are the best choices for their own health. Nobody's refusing the vaccine because they don't want what's best for themselves or their family. And so it's really important that when we're talking to people who are hesitant, that we're approaching it with that understanding and empathy that all of us want what's best. And so I just want to give people the tools that they need to feel confident in the vaccine, because I know that they want what's best for themselves and their families and their communities. And so we need to work really hard as public health to make sure people do feel confident that this is what's best for them and for their families and their communities. Because we've had that opportunity to look at all of that science, and we just want to be able to share it in a way that makes sense to the public so they also can have that confidence.
Yeah. Now, through all of this, Dr. Reimer, what has surprised you most about the disease itself, about COVID, and then also human nature? I mean, especially right now, what's happening, people don't want restrictions, they don't want to wear a mask, they don't want the vaccine. Probably, obviously you're prepared for this too as well.
Yeah, about the disease itself, I think the biggest surprises were the fact that children were so low risk, because usually when it's flu season or cold season, that your kid who's in daycare, that's the highest risk person that can give you a cold for sure. So we didn't expect that kids would be less likely to get infected and less likely to transmit to others. So that's been a really pleasant surprise that they're so much less likely, especially because a lot of them can't follow public health guidance. You can't ask a toddler to wear a mask. They can't do it. So that's been wonderful, but certainly a surprise. Likewise, people who are immunocompromised haven't been experiencing very severe health outcomes related to COVID like they do for other viruses. So that was also a pleasant surprise. But this, I mean, however many people were experiencing the severe outcomes was the less pleasant surprise. I mean, we've obviously seen people in hospital. We've seen the scary stories from other countries where their systems were overwhelmed. So, you know, it's been a lot of stressful new information, even if there were some of those glimmers of hope with some of the folks that we thought would be impacted and weren't, at least not as much as we would have expected.
Yeah.
And I mean, looking at how people respond, you know, we know that there's always a huge variety of perspectives on how we should work together as a community and what's most important. So I don't think it was a surprise that we saw that here as well. We get regular contact from many people in the public pushing on all sides of the restrictions. And, you know, my email is full of people saying you need to shut down, and full of people saying, you know, you need to let me open my business. And so these are really challenging decisions where it weighs very heavily on public health to have to make those really difficult decisions about potentially impacting someone's livelihood in order to save someone's life. And these are not easy. And I know Dr. Rusin takes it very seriously every time he has to make a new rule.
Well, like I can imagine for both you and Dr. Rusin. So maybe personally, Dr. Reimer, how have you coped through all of this? You know, I mean, we know that mental health issues are in the forefront, but for you, being right there and making hard decisions, like you said, how have you coped through this?
Yeah, I mean, this has certainly been one of the hardest, well, probably the hardest part of my career I've ever faced. And I'm so thankful to have such a supportive team that I work with, the other medical officers of health, the public health nurses, the managers, like all of them working so incredibly hard and providing that support to each other is what helps you get through the day. And certainly support from my family as well, being able to come home and relax with people who love and support you is something that I can't value greatly enough. And then I, just for my own clarity of mind, try to stay as physically active as I can. There's not a lot of free time in this job, but trying to get out for early morning runs and bike rides or late night, just get out with the dog as much as I possibly can, helps me clear my mind a little bit and get ready for the next day.
Oh my goodness, and do you have to wear a disguise when you go out so people don't recognize you and start bombarding you with questions?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the least expected parts of my whole life, was to be recognized while I was out for a run. So that has happened, but I never would have thought that would be my new life.
Well, and looking at what you were before, you mentioned working with public health, and because you cared and wanted to make a difference. This COVID-19 and the pandemic really has opened everybody's eyes to the discrepancies. To the people that have and the people that have not, you know, whether it's to be able to self-isolate or they live in a communal home or whether they don't have internet or all of these things that have sort of come into play. What changes do you think will happen to our public health system once we get into some sort of new normal?
Yeah, I mean, what you really point out something that sometimes gets overlooked, because we'll talk about how we're all in this together, but really the experiences that people have are so different, and we're not all going through the same pandemic together. So, you know, I would never complain about my experience in this pandemic. It's been a lot of hard work, but I have job security, I have health, and so I'm not facing the same stresses that people who have lost their jobs, people who can't take time off if they're a close contact, and so have to struggle with following a public health order or losing income that they need in order to feed their family that week. And so it is really different for different people what they're experiencing. People are losing loved ones, and you know, I've had family members be infected, but my family members have not become so severely ill that we've had to deal with that in my immediate family. And so it's not the same pandemic for all of us, and public health, we're going to have to do a lot of work coming out of this to try to support the people who were so greatly impacted negatively by a lot of both the infection and the transmission, but also by the public health measures that we used. They are a necessary tool to save lives, but they're not without harms themselves. And so we're going to have to start to think about how do we support people who lost income, who lost family members, who got in trouble because they couldn't follow public health orders. This is a lot of long-term work that we're going to need to do to support our communities.
Yes. And then I guess moving forward, can you give us a guesstimate on what hopefully our new normal will be?
Well, I mean, one of the things we're starting to see that's really encouraging is that since we've been 18 plus for vaccine eligibility in the north, we're already seeing the numbers come down. The rest of the province is going up in this third wave, but northern Manitoba is not. And so that's so exciting to see that the vaccines, are starting to move us in the right direction. And so once we get a lot of Manitobans immunized, we'll be able to start moving back on some of those public health orders and start getting to spend time face to face with our friends and families. But it's not going to be just a sudden switch and back to pre-COVID. It's going to be a little while before we start having big events, and there's going to have to be conversations around how we can run those big events in the future. I think one of the good things I hope that sticks from this pandemic is that people stay home when they're sick. There was a lot of pressure at jobs to work even if you're sick. And I don't think that pressure is going to exist the same way, at least in the near future, that people feel they have to go to work even when they're sick for most people. And so, I haven't had a cold since, it's probably been a year now. And that's been wonderful to not have had to have a cold. And so hopefully that's one of those things that becomes a new normal, that we respect sick time and that we make sure that people have paid sick time, because we want to make sure that they can stay home when they're sick in a way that protects them and protects their families. I think masks aren't going to go away immediately. And we'll have to figure out how those integrate into new society. And maybe it'll be more like what we've seen in some Asian countries, where people wear them when they're in close proximity or when they have an illness, as opposed to all the time. So lots of things that might be different, and we'll have to wait and see exactly how all of this lands.
Oh, well, it certainly has been, definitely a learning experience, both for personal and also as a citizen. For you, Dr. Reimer, I know we're not out of it yet, but what have you learned personally about yourself that you didn't know beforehand going into this?
Oh, yeah, that's a tough question. It's hard to even take a moment to self-reflect these days. It's so much of go, go, go. But I mean, I hope that I learned a bit about my own resiliency to be able to keep working. People have very strong feelings about the actions that we do. And so to be able to keep working hard when people are not happy with some of the public health responses is something I've learned that I'm able to do. But also making sure that I'm hearing people and listening and learning from their experiences, so that we weigh out the perspectives that people in Manitoba have with all of these decisions as well. So yeah, I think I'm learning that I can't wait to someday get to have a vacation again, but I don't know when that'll be.
Well, and I must say that your Spanish and your French are amazing. You're the first person I've ever seen on a media conference that did all three languages. So I think that's another thing you've learned about yourself.
Yeah, well, the French is for me even harder than the Spanish. So I've spent some time living in a few different countries where I lived with families and learned the language from them. So I have to really thank them for their patience when I was learning those languages. But I really, especially when I'm talking about topics like barriers because of language access, I wanted to use every skill that I could to communicate with people as much as possible. And if I can say it in Spanish, then why wouldn't I offer that? Because if it can reach one extra person who doesn't speak English or French, then I want to do that. So I really worked with the communications team to find ways to integrate the Spanish as well as the French, because we know, especially as the temporary foreign workers are starting to arrive in Manitoba, there's quite a few Spanish speakers who may not speak a lot of English, but we still want to get them immunized. So I want to reach those folks, and hopefully the Spanish helps.
Oh, definitely. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for spending this time with us, Dr. Reimer. We're all behind you. We praise you and Dr. Rusin and all the work and your team are doing. And we know that we are protected. And you can go to the website protectmb.ca and book your appointment and find out all the information you need on the vaccines. Thank you so much, Dr. Reimer.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Welcome back to Hue at Home. Coming up, we'll have another Verde Salon segment. This time, stylist Katherine will tame those curly locks of yours and make a beautiful tousled mane. But first, our life coach, Linda Drosdowech, does what moms do best, tell us stories for comfort.
Hey everyone, how are you doing? I'm really happy to be here. I wanted to talk about something that I love to talk about, which is storytelling. And I wanted to, in particular, focus on how we use stories to comfort ourselves. And I'll give you an example of something that just happened recently that's been really wonderful in my life. As some of you may know, my mother passed away recently. And right before her viewing, which is, of course, an extremely difficult moment, my daughters and I decided to go to the cemetery where my dad is buried. And we got coffees. We had the dog. It wasn't a particularly somber event. We just went. They're teenagers. We were talking about all sorts of things, wandering around, looking at different gravestones, and really, it was just quite a lovely moment. And as we were leaving, my daughter Lucy, who's 15, she noticed two Canadian geese flying overhead. And she said, "Oh, look, Mom, it's Grandma and Papa." She said it very matter of fact. And it was really beautiful. It was, the three of us looked up and we were like, it is Grandma and Papa. And in that moment, we created a story that gave us comfort, and it let us think of my parents being together. It let us think of my mother's spirit being transformed into a different energy. We were able to create even that symbol of geese to remind us of my parents. All of this happened very quickly. And what I loved afterwards was that it gave us something very beautiful to hold on to as we faced, difficult stages in the grieving process. But what was also wonderful was that I wrote this story on my social media, and so many people reached out to say, I see my stepfather in every rainbow. I see my father in whenever I see a mallard duck. I see my mother every time I see a butterfly. Every time I see a hummingbird, I think of my mom and my sister. It was this beautiful sharing of everyone's stories that they've created that give them meaning and give them comfort during a really difficult time. And that carries you through past the difficult time and gives you that strength, knowing that you have that ability to tap into that connection in your heart to those memories, to that person, to the beauty of nature, to our own strength, our own resilience. And so I just want you to remind you to, look at where you do that in your own life right now and think about something that you've already done to create a story that gives you comfort. And if you haven't, it's as simple as choosing something and noticing it. And that's really is the power of this. It's just the power of noticing something, taking a moment and creating that connection in our heart to our loved one, to our someone who's gone before us. And it really can be an incredibly beautiful gift. So look how you do it in your own life right now. And if you're looking for something, go for a walk and see if there's something that speaks to you and create a story that gives you comfort.
Looking to highlight your hairstyle with some glitz and glamour? Well, you'll love Birch accessories. They are unique in design and quality without the high-end price. Express your personal style to the world with these beautiful and affordable pieces. Order online at verdesalon.ca or birchaccessories.ca and use NEW10 for 10% off your first order.
Hi guys, today I'm going to be showing you my curly hair routine. I like to start out with our Nutriplenish leave-in conditioner and then brush that through. I find it works really great as a detangler, so I like to put it in before I brush through my hair. Then after that, I part my hair where it wants to naturally lay. I like to move my hair around so I can see where my curls want to sit on their own. Then I use the Emollient styling foam. I like it because it helps to set my curls. It really does give them a lot of shine as well. Next, I use the Be Curly Curl Enhancer. I like to use quite a bit of this product. I find it enhances my curls really nicely so they don't all just stick together in a clump. It gives them a really nice piecey look as well. Then after that, I use what's left of my hands of the curl enhancer and define the curl just by twisting the curls in the direction that they naturally want to sit. Then after that, I go and use my diffuser. You want to have it on the medium heat setting just so it doesn't get super hot on your curls. And you want to try not to touch the curls as much as possible. I'll go through and scrunch them up a little bit in between using the diffuser. And I want to dry my hair 75 to 80%. I like to flip my hair over too, just to get really close to the root, just to give myself a lot of volume. Then after that, I just run my hands through and move my root around a little bit just to give it some volume, and that's it.
Welcome back to Hue at Home. Troubadour Jeffery Straker would by now probably have traveled across Canada twice, performing his new works. But unfortunately, this year it is again virtual. Jeffery will be making a stop in Winnipeg on May 12th in support of the West End Cultural Centre. You can go to wecc.ca for all the details. I recently caught up with Jeffery, virtually of course, and he talks very openly about the passing of his mother. I want to give a very warm Winnipeg welcome, although, Jeffery, it's snowing today in Winnipeg. But anyways, a warm Winnipeg welcome to you, Jeffery Straker. COVID has not been one iota of a difference for you. It sounds like you've been busy making music. Making music, making music and music,
making all of it. So first of all, you can hopefully keep your snow in Winnipeg. It's a cool day here in Regina. I think we're supposed to warm up to like about 7 or something. So spring's coming. I'm being optimistic here, so that's good. But you're right. I have been really busy. I've been releasing a whole bunch of singles off what will soon to be a full album that I'm going to release, and planning an online tour, because that's what COVID lets us do these days, is go touring online. So here we are.
Well, and I take it too, your lovely living room in Regina is now converted to a wonderful recording studio. So, and it's not sort of unlike where I am too. I've converted my basement into a small little TV studio, so I can still connect and spread the word on what all of these Canadian artists are doing. I guess let's start with you, how this has all unfolded, and I know it, I guess, really starts with a tragedy, and I'm really sorry to hear about the loss of your mother. So that's, I think, when...
This new album did really sort of, a lot of it came from sadly, from the loss of mom. She passed away really suddenly and really unexpectedly, with sort of no advance warning, if you will, 2 years and 3 months ago. And when you lose someone that close, I mean, I'm able to finally talk about it without bawling my head off. But when because I've had a lot of time to process this. But when you lose someone that close, people who have lost someone that close will know you're thrown into a lot of, like, the grieving process throws you into quite a turmoil. And you look at your own, like, you look at, of course, all the memories you have with that person, but then you also, part of that is looking at your own self, and you look at sort of like where you've come from and where you're headed, because you're really hit with this real poignant sort of notion of mortality. Not to get too profound about it, but you really are. And you go through the questioning and the grieving, and you have some sort of revelations and reach some sort of resolution. And luckily for me, I came out of all that process I landed on gratitude. I landed on the notion of being really thankful for the person that I had, for the time that I had her, because she was a wonderful, wonderful mom. And that has sort of informed this recording, like all the songs on it,
Yeah. Well, and you know what? And everybody's journey is so different. And I just want to say that I am so happy personally that it has been a positive one for you, because I know that, for some people it isn't a positive journey. And like you said, you kind of have to look at it as a blessing, as something, a gift, to have known her, for her to love you and share, her life experiences with you. And so I know this has inspired your work. How is this album different than some of your rest or previous works?
It for sure, it's more personal. Like a lot of my past records, and even before Mom passed away, there was an evolution in my songwriting to go from having the lens be pointed outwards, and I was often writing about other characters and other people and places, and being an observer and a chronicler. And over time, probably because we're all getting older, aren't we, the lens has turned inwards, and I've been a lot more introspective and sort of chronicling inner things. And so what happened with the passing of Mom on this recording is, by and large, the songs are just far more personal, because she was like her passing was almost like this catalyst to dig deeper. And I've always wanted to dig deeper, and I've been trying to dig deeper, and I've been going deeper. But with her being gone, it just made me sort of almost fall deeper. And as a result, the songs are just a lot more personal, And I like the past songs I wrote in the past that were like, observing other people, and they went over really well with audiences at shows. But I really hope, and I feel these ones will also be received well. Just like they also chronicle, just they're pointed in a different way,
Well, and I'll ask you this then, interesting, because, and I kind of remember your songs, you're like that, like called you like a troubadour, a traveling man that, would tell these stories. And that does relate so well to a live audience. We're going to be talking now about your virtual tour, which I know a lot of artists are doing. Will this record probably mean more because you are virtual, because it's just you're not in front of a live audience, and you have that chance to be really personal? I think could be very powerful virtually.
I hope so. I mean, it is the whole this whole doing shows online when there's no one in the room is a really tricky sort of hurdle for people who make their living as a live performing musician, because that performance is not one-dimensional from the stage into sort of an abyss. There's an exchange of energy, as you would know, versus like having someone in your studio versus doing these things over a camera. I mean, there's an exchange of energy that happens there when there's an audience. Now with no audience, you literally are sort of left with putting something out there. And to your point, I actually never really thought of this until you said it, but that's a really neat observation, that these songs are coming from such a deeper place. It probably will help them transport through this virtual sort of means. That I mean, now you're going to make me watch for it when I'm doing this. No, it's a really interesting point. I hope that does happen, because they are coming from a much deeper place.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to do, because I know too, or whatever, if you're doing a live show, you get that energy, I know, off the audience, and that sort of is your adrenaline, right, to move and to be even more energetic. Let's talk now the whole process about the virtual tour. And of course, you're going to be coming to Winnipeg, I believe May 12th, at the
That's
West
right.
End Cultural Center. So how is that all going to work, Jeffrey?
Well, so the stage is actually in Regina, and so the performance happens in Regina, and then I've partnered with 6 venues across the country to sort of go on this virtual tour, and it starts on April 30th in Calgary with the Calgary Folk Club, winds its way across the country, and the Manitoba stop, if you will, is a partnership with the West End Cultural Center, where I've performed in the past live on their great grand piano, and so they're promoting the show or to their audience and their listeners. I'm promoting the show to my Winnipeg followers, and hopefully what that does is it allows their listeners, my listeners, to sort of maintain some sort of community around music, even though it's hard to gather around music in this online sense, So the stream will happen to people's computers in their homes, but the stage will be in Regina. And I have these 6 dates across the country. In reality, anybody can get a ticket to any date, but we're encouraging people in Winnipeg to check out the Winnipeg evening, because a portion of the proceeds do go to the West End Cultural Center.
Yes, and that's another point too, right? All of these incredible venues with no live music. It is so sad. And I mean, yes, we're kind of looking at our probably 3rd lockdown, but the music venues have all been closed anyways throughout this. Jeffrey, and we will see light at the end of the tunnel. Where do you think your first show will be? What will it look like live?
Once the pandemic's done, you know what's really odd? I've actually not even thought of this, because I'm in that. I mean, well, here's the thing. After I do this virtual tour in May, this summer I do have live shows booked. I've actually got 40 of them booked, but they're in backyards. So what people have leaned forward and they've crossed their fingers and thought, okay, we'll probably be able to have gatherings of 30 outdoors this summer. So a lot of my fans from my social media pages have reached out to me, and it's over 40 now have booked these backyard shows. So my first shows are going to be in backyards, and people have reached out to me right from the Okanagan to the eastern townships of Quebec. So, touch wood, we can travel. If not, there's a whole heap of them in Saskatchewan if we can't go anywhere. So I've sort of hedged, sort of protected all the options. But those will be the first shows, and then really, hopefully by the fall, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but at least it's my hope that some smaller audiences will be allowed in venues, and then hopefully by December, I know a lot of larger venues in Canada are now booking big shows for December.
Really? Have you been Have you been vaccinated yet?
This is the sad story. My vaccination day was yesterday, and they ran out of vaccine.
Oh, are you serious? Oh my goodness.
So I have to wait. I have to wait for 2 weeks now.
No. Oh my
Are you
goodness.
vaccinated?
Not yet, but they've lowered it. Yeah, they've lowered it to 40, right? In Saskatchewan too. Yeah. So, yes. So I'm booking and might just go and get it. Instead of going to the super site. I don't know. We've been having this whole big conversation. Vaccines, music. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, you are going to play us a song. So.
Yeah.
What will it be?
I'm going to play you a song. It's the waltz off my record. It's called Play That Song Again. And the reason I'll play this one is it's quite a reflective song. And to me, it sort of captures the spirit of the rest of the record. It looks back and it sort of takes stock, but, and sort of examines the past, but it lands on an optimistic note and is happy to be, happy to have taken that glance to the past and is content where it ends up.
Oh, well, how beautiful. What a great ending. It's so good to see you again, Jeffrey. And everybody, check out his concerts online. He's going to be at the West End Cultural Center, May 12th.
Every now and then, I look at your picture in a frame. You're the one I got drunk on and kept drinking anyway. my senses like some old radio tuned them in. You helped me let them go. Held on for all I was worth and I let go again. I've tried to remember and I've tried to forget. You let me lost in my own body, from my head down to my toes. Play that song again, show me how it goes. You took me prisoner, left me on death row. The voice in my head saying I told you so. And I'm in my mother's arms, from great more. Play that song again, show me how it goes. Yeah, play that song again, show me how it goes. I stood my ground. Thought about making a change and starting all brand new. I moved the furniture around and round in my living room. Oh, how to mend the broken, no one really knows. Play that song again, show me how it goes. Still hear your voice and it's speaking to me. We're dancing round and round in the honesty. I remember the music the first time, so soft and slow. Play that song again, show me how it goes. Yeah, show me how it goes. Yeah, play that song again. Show me how it goes.
What's up? Ooh, say what, say what, say what? Girl, you know what's up. Ooh, say what, say what, say what? So tell me what's up. I'm digging you. I'm feeling you. Girl, you know what's up. Say I'm digging you. And I'm more. Tell me what's up.
We want to give a big special thank you to all of our guests on today's show and leave you with this question. What event will you go to as soon as you're vaccinated? Will it be a sporting event or maybe a concert? We want to know, so send us an email to hello@ilikehue.com or message us on Facebook and Instagram @ilikehue. But for now, stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll see you next time on Hue at Home.